Field notes. Today was interesting because I was thinking and I was talking about when it was that I really felt like the backlash got personal and got real to me, and it took talking about it with someone I know and I'm close to and I trust to really figure it out. And it didn't occur to me that it happened when I realized my own people believed it. I've been fighting white people and their stereotypes all my life. I've been strongly proving myself and proving to them how wrong they are about me and about their preconceived ideas and notions of me. I remember, when I first moved to Jersey and I experienced, a white suburban mom with her child seeing me come down the street and crossing the street in fear. This happened to me a lot, you know. It happened to me a lot in Jersey when I first moved to Jersey. And, I got stopped by cops almost every day, and teachers thought I was stupid because I was black. That was very obvious to combat. Racism is always easy to fight when it's obvious from an emotional point of view, from a preparedness point of view. Like, I was ready for white people to discriminate against me. It didn't really make it any better. It didn't make it hurt any less. But I had a place for that. I had a place to put that. You know what I mean? I put it in this is just white racism, the same type of racism that I was dealing with my entire life. The hardest part for me is when black people started talking about the same shit that popular media talked about when it came to Jar Jar being a racial stereotype. Because I had been fighting against racial stereotypes about me my whole life. And I knew about racism historically, and I knew about racism personally through my parents because they had lived it and lived through it. But when black people started believing all the Uncle Tom stuff, that's when it hurt me. And I realized that today. I didn't come to that conclusion until today, working through a bunch of shit, writing this thing today. And although it hurt the media backlash, and I guess this goes along with the whole fanboy, pimply kid who just wants the force to be real in the basement, that didn't hurt as much as being in my neighborhood in Brooklyn and seeing black people say the same shit. Because that's who I had been fighting for all my life. And that's who I thought was my strongest support and ally. Here I am, a black artist doing black art. And, this is my point of view. This is my perspective of things. This, everything is hyperbolic when it comes to Star Wars. It's big. It's huge. The universe is bloody huge. In my microcosm of the world, in my small petri dish of what was going on, I lived in Fort Greene, Brooklyn. And Fort Greene, Brooklyn at the time, it was black. It was a lot of black people there. Not so much anymore, but at the time, not only was it black, but it was black artists. It was black people like me. You know what I mean? Chris Rock lived up the street, Nelson George lived, Spike Lee lived on my block, his sister lived on my block. So it was just it was this time where black artists was in Fort Greene, Brooklyn. And it was just a place where we could be these weird, eclectic, nerdy guys with ideas. And here I was in this thing that I thought was going to just put me on a level on which I could really make a difference in not only this world, but in my community and have opportunities and I remember on set, everybody was like, oh, where are you? Where'd you live? And I was like, oh, I live in Brooklyn. I was really super proud of it. And this was before the I live in Brooklyn craze happened. Being in my hood and in my haunts, the coffee shops and the spaces that I frequent, and then believing all the media stuff and having it be me was just so painful. It was so painful that it hurt. And I wanted allies. I needed people to stand up for me, and they didn't. And they didn't because of the same information that was coming out in the public. So I don't fault Black people for it, but I'm just realizing that that's when I wanted to disappear. That's when I was like, oh man, here I am. I'm going to be a footnote in history, and nobody's really going to give a shit about the work that I did or how pioneering it was, or any of the other shit that really mattered to me. And then, dun, dun, dun. But I realized today that was the hardest part. It really wasn't, if I'm gonna be honest, it really wasn't the voices in the media. They were a catalyst. It was really when Black people in my neighborhood started to sound like those people in the media, especially being of Caribbean descent. You know what I mean? Like, being from the Caribbean is another thing. Caribbean people in the United States, we have our own shit. You know what I mean? There's a, and I'm only half. Like, my father's side is Caribbean. But the dirty little secret about Caribbean people, I don't even know if I should fucking get into this, but the dirty little secret is there's a little bit of a superiority complex there, even though we all come from Africa. But there's a pride in being an immigrant from the Caribbean because of the work ethic, and there was this pride that the Caribbean side of my family has, because they did come to this country and it wasn't easy, and they worked their way through a bunch of odd and civil service jobs, and they bought houses, and they provided for their family, and they made it possible for me to be in Star Wars. They did, dead up. You know what I'm saying? That Caribbean immigrant work ethic worked for me because my grandfather had it, and he gave it. My great grandfather had it, and they gave it to my grandfather, and it gave it to my father, and it gave it to me. Right, Caribbean side. So when the whole Jamaican talking Caribbean shit came out, that was deeply offensive. I am proud of being from the Caribbean. Very proud of it. And our speech in the Caribbean is a dialect. It is not some sort of ignorant, uneducated English. It's a dialect. And it's a dialect that needs to be respected. Truth be told, the Misas and the uses of the Jar Jar, of the Gungan language, that's a dialect too. And the racism behind saying that dialect from the Caribbean and looking down on it as not being quote unquote proper is fucking racist and offensive. And then putting the Jar Jar language, which is a dialect as well, and putting it down by saying it's a Jamaican accent is ignorant and offensive. But what hurt me was Jamaican people thinking that I was trying to put down the Jamaican dialect, being from the Caribbean and being proud of it. That's what hurt me. I've always been proud of being Black. I've always been proud of being American and Black. And I've always been proud of being Caribbean and Black. I'm really proud of it. And when Black people and Caribbean Black people and American Black people started parroting what was going on with Jar Jar and the media and hating me for it, that's when it hurt the most. That's when it got personal for me. And realizing that if I don't have an audience, what's the point? And I think that's when my career started to nosedive. I think that's when people were just like, oh, wait a minute, you are not, yo, Hollywood doesn't look on black people as valuable anyway, straight up. Let's be fucking real about this shit. You look at black people as ancillary. Although you cannot have, warning, here comes the soapbox. You cannot have a blockbuster movie without black people. It doesn't work that way. We are not paid attention to in Hollywood, right? At best, what Hollywood tries to do is segregate us. This movie is for black audiences. So me as black actor walking into agency, which I couldn't get, audition, casting, when they looked at me and realized, oh, he doesn't have a black audience, how are we gonna sell him if he can't get a black audience? That's what made me poisonous. I knew that. I knew that if I didn't have black people on my side, that I was finished. Just because how fucked up this industry is. You know, the industry sees a black face and they think black audience. They don't see a black face and think, oh, maybe he could do Macbeth. Black face, black audience. And I didn't have a black audience because they thought I was a sellout. They thought I was an Uncle Tom. Not everybody. But it was there. And that's when I felt like I was not valuable because this is all I ever wanted to do. I can do other things, but this is all I ever wanted to do. And it's a big risk to follow your heart. And I did. I've been alone with this for a very long time. And it's heavy, y'all. It's heavy. I just don't want to be alone anymore. That's why I'm doing this show, because I don't want to be alone anymore.